Welcome, everyone. The Costume Society of America would like to thank you all today for joining today's Dress and Drinks. I would like to welcome today's guest, Abby Cox, the costume diva extraordinaire of YouTube. And I want to thank her in advance for her time and effort in this. So, welcome, Abby. It's a great pleasure to see you and to have this conversation with you.
It is awesome to be here, and I don't know if you tried this cocktail, Leon, but oh
I've
my.
I've prepped a double just in case.
We can talk about I have a story about the cocktail that we can when we do the cocktail, but I have also prepared a double which I think might result in me being flat on the floor. So we'll
Okay.
see how
I've not tried it yet, so this is an extravagant moment in time. And while we're here, I want to give a big shout out to Anne Wass for her mocktail version of this. And you always come through. Thanks for the virgin version of the Widow's Kiss.
How do you do a virgin? I guess we can talk about this later, but I'm like, how do you turn a widow's kiss into an alcohol-free version?
It's a spectacular recipe. Anne is
Wow.
brilliant. So
Okay.
um,
Okay.
okay,
Cool.
so with that, let's dive in. Abby, so you have your own YouTube channel. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're going to share with us today.
So for those of you who are not familiar with me, my name's Abby Cox, and I am now a full-time YouTuber. I used to not be a full-time YouTuber, but as of like June 1st, 2020, I was a full-time YouTuber. Before I was a full-time YouTuber, I actually spent the past basically 4 years, well, almost four, it was like 3.5, working as vice president of American Duchess. And then before that, I worked at Colonial Williamsburg in various capacities. But the last capacity was as one of the apprentice milliner and mantua makers in the historic trades department. So that's kind of like my background. I have a master's in decorative arts and design history from the University of Glasgow, Scotland. So I've been doing dress history for a long time. I've been a member of CSA. And so now what I do is I do YouTube full time. And the main focus of my YouTube channel is basically like my why, like the reason why, like my motivation behind my channel is to make dress history as accessible as possible. And so one of the ways that I do that is through collecting antique clothing and doing videos about the antique clothing on my YouTube channel. And those videos are free, they're just there, and I take my camera and I get in the armpits of the dress and I show the seams, I show the mistakes. Wow, literally all I've had is water. And just try to give people who have never been to a museum to see an antique dress up close, to try and give them that experience and from home. Because I mean, I'm sure you know this, like it's getting in, especially American museums, they can be a little hard to get access into. Like,
Oh, 100%.
yeah, I mean, sign your life away, your firstborn, and, take a blood sample, like biometrics get taken. So I've kind of just decided to take away that line of separation and just allow people into my collection. And which means that I now can buy antique clothes as business expenses. And so now I buy a lot of antique clothes.
That's fantastic. That's
So,
fantastic. No, you're totally correct. I mean, there is no greater joy as a person who likes clothes when you're
yeah.
sitting in that room and you're like, this is a thing from the 17th century. And you're like looking through it and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. I will say my favorite moment of that time in which I was in London I was the associate designer in a production of Nixon in China. And the V&A happened to have an exhibition of of Mao's stuff up. And so I've actually held in my hand one of Chairman Mao's suits. It was so amazing. They let me in. It was awesome. It was
That's incredible. And you're
so
like, he sweated into this. Like,
the pockets. It's all about the pockets, people.
did he have the pockets
So
everywhere?
he
Did
had
you?
really specific, weird, particularly tailored pockets. They were super strange.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so this is just some photos of stuff, just some recent acquisitions to my collection because I have been collecting much faster than I've been producing video. So this really awesome 1870s travel suit is from a set of 3 that I've purchased, and they're all from the same family. The If anyone watches my YouTube channel, the 1860s ball gown with matching day bodice in the watered silk, that's from the same family. So that piece was 1860. This is obviously 1870. It is missing its overskirt, so it's not fully complete, but it's still pretty epic. And she's actually up on the mannequin too, so we can have another look at her. And then there's another piece that I think is later on in this PowerPoint that is from the 1890s and is honestly I find it to be kind of ugly in like a really beautiful way, but the more I look at it, the more I go, ugh. But this I love. But this is from the same family, and I got 3 complete dresses from the same family. So this is one of them. I love it. The black and the lavender, the sleeves on this thing are just, oh my gosh, they're insane. And the collar is still intact. It's just missing its overskirt, and that's the only thing. But I really want to reproduce the skirt. I think the skirt with it being quilted is just fantastic.
Oh, I was going to say, I love the quilted underskirt. That's amazing.
Yeah, I wish it had its overskirt, but it's still lovely. This is one of my favorite pieces in my collection. It is a 1914 suit, so it has the skirt and the tunic. And I also get almost all my stuff from the same dealer too. So this is from Witchy Vintage, but that collar, oh,
That's amazing.
that. And the work on this is just so good. I did a video on this one. This tunic is just, I cannot, like photos don't do it justice. Like when you look at this thing in person and you feel that silk and like the quality of the silk and you see the embroidery and how thoughtful it was done, it is just, it's beautiful. There's weights in it to help keep the line smooth and like have it lay perfectly. The draping on this skirt is just incredible. And it's really hard to see, but this had the most beautiful like China weight silk ikat lining that was like bright and floral. So you have like this vamp queen, right? And she's like, oh, I am so stylish. I am the most stylish thing of all time. And then she's like, you know, kind of gothy queen. And then she opens up her tunic and it's like, look at my floral lining. So she's like goth on the outside and cottagecore on the inside. And she's just, this piece is just incredible. So the neat thing about the embroidery for this, Leon, is that it was done after the tunic was fit. And so it's one complete piece all the way around, and it's done custom to the finished fit of the jacket. So It's actually pretty simple because you can see in the zoom, it's in the zoomed up photo, it's mostly just like satin stitches with some couching stitches. But it's a nice, thick, chunky silk twist. So it looks actually pretty easy to do, but it's a really, really nice touch. It's
lovely.
I love this piece.
Lovely. Do you know who the designer of this is by any chance?
No.
Can you tell if this was, at this time, can you tell if this was handmade, custom made, or sort of a combo, or machine made?
There's definitely handwork in there. There's some machine work too. When Nicole and I looked at it together, like when we were talking about it, the conclusion was like this is a mix of really beautiful draping dressmaking techniques, but also there is tailoring techniques in the tunic itself. Like the tunic looks very dishabillé and like soft and you know artsy and very relaxed in its making, but the reality is that there's actually tailoring techniques in the tunic itself. So it's a very structured deconstruction. And it's relaxed on purpose. So it's a mix of tailoring. It's a mix of dressmaking. We have the hand embroidery that's custom made. To me, it's very clear it was made by a design house that probably had multiple hands working on it. We just don't, unfortunately, know the design house because there's no like the lining's gone, the label's gone. It might have been a museum deaccession at some point. So because there's some evidence of some bad conservation trying to protect the lining. So yeah, that's my best guess. And Paula at Witchy, she doesn't have any provenance over where this, you know, she bought it from someone else, and so it's just been passed down.
All the classical hallmarks of a well-loved garment that has been passed around.
Yeah, and then the lining was removed and all evidence of who made it. So 2 1920s dresses. One of these has been in a video, one has not.
Lovely.
So the fuchsia with the circles, the velvet fuchsia dress, that's actually my very, very first antique purchase ever.
Oh
So
wow.
she's my firstborn. She's my first baby. Um, so I was in an antique mall in Louisville, and she was on a mannequin, and I was just like, I had to have her. And at the time, I was still like a bright young baby, and I was like, I think it's 1920s. Like, I'm so scared to like say, is it really actually
How much
1920s?
did you
But
pay for it?
I think it was maybe around $300.
Oh,
You
not
know,
bad.
yeah, I mean, it's kind of, now I'm like, I probably paid, like, did I pay too much? Did I not pay too much? But she is very unique, in her beading and everything. Her shaping's not special, but the fabric and the trim is special. So, and she's like all hand sewn. There's no machine stitching on her whatsoever.
Wow.
Other than
Wow.
I think the beading might have been maybe machine done, but yeah,
Look
no, she's
close up.
completely hand sewn. And then the one next to it is a recent acquisition that I bought as a massive lot from a friend who is still in college, and his local community theater was having a like costume shop sale, and
Of
I think
course.
some of his college was like deaccessioning some stuff from their costume department too. And so I just bought a box of stuff. He was like, like send me some rough photos on Instagram. I was like, yeah, sure, this is fine. Like, yeah. And then this showed up, and she's incredible. So
Is that ruching? Is it ruching all around the neckline, the red?
yes, and it's like stuffed, so it's padded, so it's like fuchsia
Oh,
pink,
kidding.
and it's wadded. And then as she goes all the way down, and then the little dicky in the front, that's kind of semi-connected, semi-not, but it goes with it, so that way you're covered up. But
Mhm.
she's this fascinating mix of like silk taffeta and like the body of silk taffeta, and then really soft, drapey, gauzy fabrics like the sleeves.
Uh-huh.
But she's like that great like transition point where her waist is starting to drop, but like she still kind of has that 19 teens feel to her. She's not full like 1920s, like the purple, like the fuchsia velvet with the beading. Like she has this weird transitional, and then she has her little basket
I was just saying, that's
applique.
usually a basket of flowers.
Yes, it's a little basket of flowers applique. Bless her. Just, but yeah, she's wild. She's so cool. Like I love this piece. This is like a 1920s piece that I would actually want to wear.
That's amazing. That's awesome.
Mhm.
So, we have a question. What's the
Mhm.
process of purchasing pieces like this? You talked about one of them, but where
Mhm.
do you mostly find yourself through online bidding or dealers or catalogs or just wherever?
So I mostly purchase online actually through people who do most of their business actually on Instagram. But Witchy Vintage is the main person that I purchase from. Paul and I have been having a relationship now for I think over a year at this point.
Awesome.
And she's really great. She actually messaged me today. Whenever my phone vibrates like 5 times in a row, I know like Paula has just sent me a bunch of photos of stuff. Um, and she kind of knows what I like, and she knows what I'm kind of, my acquisition ideas are, and so she usually tries to send me stuff that she's found, and I kind of get first dibs on a lot of stuff, which is really nice. That's how I've been able to really score some really great pieces without having to like duke it out with other people.
Are
So
there other auction sites that you use or that that because there are a few that
mhm,
are throughout the country that we
yeah,
all of it.
yeah,
So what other auction sites do you use or other places that you turn to? I love that you bought this one from this theater company.
yeah. Like, well, a friend. It was a friend who got it at like a rummage sale, and he was like, "Do you want this stuff?" And I was like, "Sure, yeah." Like good stories, like where you literally get the box of stuff, and you're like, "Oh, this is actually like a really great piece." Um, I've bid on some live auctions. Like I did the Mary Daring collector's collection. I did attempt to buy something through Hinman auctions last Friday, but it did not work out in my favor. There were two bidders in there who were like all about the women's clothes, and if they decided they wanted something, the only thing you do is make them pay more for it. If you have unlimited funds, it's fine. But I mean, I'm also very spoiled, and I kind of have an idea of what I'm willing to pay for stuff at this point. So if it goes beyond what I'm willing to pay, I'm like, nah, I ain't gonna do it. So I have attempted. I would really love to do more auctions, like Augusta and Carrie Taylor, and more Hinman auctions, but I have not had any luck with auctions. I think it kind of psychs you out. Like it psychs me out a little bit. I'm like, this is way too stressful. Like,
Right.
but I guess that's the game of it. So,
It is a bit,
yeah.
yeah.
And
Cool.
sometimes I've
Okay.
bought stuff on Etsy, random antique store. My mom's the one with the really good antique store find, like Juju.
Oh,
She
really?
finds the coolest stuff. Yeah. So
Nice.
so this is one of my favorites.
Ooh, that's lovely.
Mhm. Yeah. So obviously complete her skirt and everything. There's been some mild alterations to it to expand its size because it's pretty teeny, but she's just that day bodice is just it's so good. It's so
That's
good.
fantastic.
Yeah.
And the watermarking is so beautiful. The moire is stunning. You can really
Mhm.
see it through it. It's just really lovely.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, it is. I just look at this and go, she's so pretty. She's just so pretty and nice and lovely. And I just love her so much. And she's just so fluffy. What I think is interesting about this one, is the moire silk, the water silk is just perfection. But how simple she is in her design, but how effective her design is.
Yeah,
The velvet band, like the velvet trims, the bows, like she really allows the fabric to kind of speak for itself, and she showed off the fabric, I think, in a really sophisticated way, because honestly, like, I'm not a huge fan of the 1860s, but
yeah.
this is stunning.
This is
Like,
lovely. And the
mhm,
sleeves on this are really fantastic. I mean, you can
mhm,
see the construction of the sleeves really
mhm,
nicely in it. Really quite stunning.
mhm. Yeah.
Mm.
And she what I liked about this too, the evening bodice was originally going to be back fastening and back lacing because of how they started to construct it, but they ended up making it front closure. So she actually opens up the center front with hooks and eyes instead
Oh,
of
wow.
lacing up the back. So I also liked how that was really accessible, because I think for historic costumers or costumers just in general, we kind of, evening gowns, they fasten in the back and someone has to be there to get you in and out of it. Well, you can get out of it easier than you can get into it. But this lady, she obviously decided that she wanted to be able to do it herself, and so they switched it to an hook and eye front, which is awesome.
And you can see that right at the bottom of the sort of
Mhm.
the tip of the bodice, where the
Yeah.
undersides are sort of going underneath a little bit. It's really
Yeah.
it's really spectacular.
So this is just really quick. This is an 1850s bodice that I've gotten, that I just wanted to throw in. You can see into my mom's like space. And we were trying to do photos, so I want to spend a lot of time on this one, but just a quick view. But some 19 teens dresses that I've acquired that have literally just,
Mm.
I think the brown one was just a freebie that was just thrown in with other stuff, and she's stunning.
She's great.
The
Sleeves, I
the
love.
yeah, the cream one in the center. This one we think is a wedding dress because it has that big calla lily like in the front, and it's unlined. It's made of wool.
Oh,
Yeah, and like when I bought it, I was like, "Oh, she's like really pretty." And then I looked at her on the mannequin when we got her. I was like, "Or she's not actually that pretty." Like, I was just,
she's very simple and lovely. She's,
yeah.
I, I
Um,
I love the giant calla lily though. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really cool detail that I never noticed until I got it. I was like, "Oh wait, what's this? Oh, it's actually a calla lily."
I wouldn't
And
guess that
it's
that
fast.
was wool. I mean, looking at it
Yeah,
from here, I wouldn't have guessed that that was wool, but it's now that you say it, it's really I can
yeah.
see what you're talking about. Yeah.
I thought it was silk. Like, but obviously that's how like not like look at the photos like, "Oh yeah, I'll take that." But it's unlined silk, and it's really interesting. I wish I had gotten some inside photos of this because in like ladies fashion magazines in the 19 teens, delineators and stuff, there are ads for, it's like called like, I don't think it's called crinolette. It's something similar to like crinolette. And what it is basically yardage you can buy that had boning attached to it, and you could cut it into widths that you needed. And then you could use that for interior structuring. And
Oh,
and so this has it, and completely raw on the inside, no finished edges, and the dress is unlined, but it has this like pre-made like boned crinolet for your waist section put in there. And we're like, God, that must have been really awkward because the wool's kind of scratchy. And then we have this like, you know, coarse crinolet with boning, with like the cut edges of the net still exposed and kind of spiky, and it's sitting there, but it was really carefully made. Like obviously the lady who made it, she put a lot of care into it. But it's yeah, we start looking at it more closely, like, oh, this is kind of, oh, okay, okay, so we did this, interesting.
And she had a really great slip that she wore underneath it, or a
Yeah,
chemise, some sort
yeah,
of, you
but you
know.
have to be careful because if you have like a silk like charmeuse like underdress or slip or bodice petticoat underneath, that crinolet boning would catch it and snag it.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
Or
like
maybe
we were like, ooh,
to give her something a little more. I mean, silk is beautiful, but like, maybe it
yeah,
was a cotton thing to
sturdier.
like, yes,
Yeah,
a little sturdier.
a little sturdier.
So,
And then this pink thing next to it is just, it's another one that came in that theater lot. And she's just kind of matches. So I was just like, oh, here's some like early teens pretties that I have. For a teenager too. Like her proportions
yeah.
are that for that of a
Are,
teenager.
are the flowers? What are the flowers? Are they like courting?
Soutache.
Soutache. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're soutache. And she's linen. So, so she's very cute and summery.
Yeah.
Perfect for like a 14, 15-year-old girl. And then, oh, here's the other one. So this is the 1890s ensemble that
Wow.
yeah, it's a lot.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's a lot of sleeve and that's a lot of going on.
it's a lot. But this is the third one in the 1860s, the 1870s travel, and then this one. So these three pieces all came from the same family, and I bought them as a lot.
Nice.
And yeah, so that bodice, the beads on that bodice, it's nice, heavy glass beads. I don't think they're jet. I do think they're glass. There is some evidence of glass bead disease on this bodice, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. And yeah, so that bodice weighs a ton. It weighs so much. And it's super like luxe feeling and very, very fancy and nice. And like obviously the silk is beautiful too. But yeah, when you kind of look at it, you're like, that's a lot.
Okay, I have to ask. Since
Yeah.
these are your own personal things, since you own them and you don't work at a museum, you have your own storage, which we'll talk about later in a moment.
Yeah.
If these arrive, how often do you put them on? How
I
many of
don't.
your garments have you worn? Oh, come on.
No, I haven't.
Never you're like, I just want to see what this feels like.
I've definitely put my 1920s like dress on.
Okay.
I will admit to that. There's like a mantelette, like a mantle. I think I've like put that on mostly just to see what it, because it was so heavy. But I don't. Here's the thing, my body. I'm like, oh no, I was like, I have put something on once. I bought a like 1899 like wedding suit that's in like really great condition, and back pre-pandemic times when I could lace down to like a 25-inch waist, like I did put it on like for a morning just to kind of see. Like I will like fully own that. But I have really broad shoulders, and so vintage clothes for me can like just vintage clothes can be really tricky for me because of how straight and broad my shoulders are.
Right.
That most stuff I don't even try because usually I'm like full She-Hulk and it's like, nah, it ain't gonna happen. So I don't.
Right. And you don't
I
want
don't.
to. I mean, because that's like, I mean, I'm a big guy, and every time I walk through a museum and I see these things, I'm like, I want to put that thing on. And now
I
that you're the person who
know.
collects it, it's like Christmas every day. You open up the box and you're like, I just got this. Oh, what do I
Yeah.
look like in this? Like, come on. Like,
Yeah. Well, I mean, like if stuff, I'm not. I'm not a big believer in obviously like things like this. Like I'm not comfortable with the idea of wearing those, but I definitely wear antique petticoats, like just plain white cotton petticoats, because it's like they're all over the place. They're
right.
not rare, they're not special, and so I will wear, and they're just like made out of like plain cotton, like poplin. They're like, yeah, whatever, you know. So I
I
definitely
want
wear
to see
those,
you
but
in this at Trader Joe's.
could you imagine? like walking down like the refrigerated like dessert section, being like, "Where's my ice cream mochi?
Exactly.
Get my like Indian like butter chicken like microwave."
Exactly.
Like everyone be like, "Oh my god, the scandal."
We can move on to the next slide. Otherwise, we'll just laugh all the whole time.
So, for my any followers who are here who might remember this, I've dubbed this bodice Meemaw, because like this could only be worn by an older lady who has a lot of attitude, and so Meemaw has her opinions on things. But this was a really cool find. So my mom found this in a box with a bunch of other stuff, including my 1825 green silk dress that is
Wow.
just kind of all balled up together. And so she bought that dress, this bodice, and like a couple other pieces, just from this antique store that just was like, "Oh yeah, we have some old clothes here." She's falling apart. Like the lining on this thing is shot. Like you look at it, it's kind of like when Thanos snapped his fingers in Avengers and like everyone turned to dust. That's literally
Right.
what happens when you look at the inside of this bodice. Like the lining is just completely destroyed. But what's cool about this bodice is that she seems to have had a bit of a hump, and it's been altered
Oh,
several times to expand, and it's got like a 35-inch waist and like a 39-inch bust. Like, we padded it out as best as we could to try and actually show the shape that's within this bodice, but it's just a really great example of not ideal proportions, not standard sizes that
real
we're
cool.
used to seeing in antique clothing. Like it's a very much a real person. You could tell she was also really short, and but she had a big booty. She did not play with that bustle. Like she was like, "I am wearing the bustle."
Well, no, I was curious because when you brought this one up, I was like, oh, she's like lopsided on her shoulders, and
Yeah.
and in tailoring and like men's tailoring, that would all be corrected, and it would be all
Mhm.
this thing, the other side would have super padding on it in order to even it out. But it's fascinating that this isn't.
I have another 1870s ladies ensemble that is complete. So it's the bodice, the overskirt, and the underskirt. And when we put it on the mannequin and we were looking at it, it became very clear that she actually had scoliosis.
Uh,
And then I actually ended up video calling Bernadette Banner because Bernadette has scoliosis and she talks about having scoliosis on her channel. And I was like, "Bae, look!" And I was like, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, yeah!" Like, and she was like helping us kind of understand like why things about like the bodice were shaped that way. Like one side was bigger than the other, and like you could literally see the curve in the
yep.
bodice, and like the hem was like inches off because obviously like one hip was higher up in the skirt. And bless this girl, she made it out of plaid. So once you really started looking, you couldn't miss it. But
Wow.
it was fascinating. Like, yeah, you can. That's what I love about old clothes. Is that you can see these people's bodies in them. Like you can see how unique they were and how quirky their bodies were and how they carried themselves. And it makes them so real and so tangible. And you're just like, "Oh, Mima, I
Yeah,
bet
this
you
is really sweet. It's so simple, but
are."
it's really sweet. I love the lace edging that goes around
Mhm.
it.
Mhm.
That's really beautiful. And just those
Yeah,
old black velvet, like I don't know, lines that just accentuate the shape of this bodice.
it
It's
does.
really fantastic. Is it
Yeah.
also a moire or is it just a
Mm-mm.
plain?
It's just a plain brown silk taffeta.
Do you know why was the water silk a desired technique? Weren't they afraid that it would look like a spill? Is it symmetrical? Typically, water is not the moire is not symmetrical. It's very asymmetrical. It also is often referenced as a wood grain, so it has that sort of thing. And like all trends, they're on trend, and you can still buy, watered or moiré silk today. It's done through a different process. Viewer wants to know how you actually store things.
So what I do is I have archival boxes, which is just kind of very standard storage for clothing. They're, acid-free, buffer tissue paper, all that. And they all live in my guest bedroom, which is literally behind the curtain over there.
Right.
And that's it. I live in Reno, Nevada, and this part of Nevada is a northern desert climate, which means it's super dry here. It is bug free because of our altitude and the dryness, basically. And I live in a brand new home with, climate control and all of that. And it's super weather tight and sealed. So when it comes to storage, I'm actually in a very good position to store clothes because I don't have humidity, I don't really have bugs, and I have beautiful, control with my iPhone climate control. So while my storage isn't ideal, it's actually, I've seen worse in museums. So
part of this webinar series is talking with different people around the country and different organizations and museums and how they tackle storage. So
yeah.
You are not alone in what you're doing. I have a real quick question. When one of your objects arrives, what do you do with anything about like conservation, or like if it's stained, or if it, like you said, the lining of that one just disappears? So what do you do about those things, or do you just sort of handle them gently and try not to disturb it anymore?
Yeah, so this piece is actually a couture piece. I actually was in talks to have this one accessioned by LACMA, but we ended up having to stop because she has glass bead disease, and you can kind of see it here. And it's really bad there, and it's starting to go ahead. And even though she's in amazing condition, like the chiffon's in great condition, you can see the effects. The glass bead disease have already made its way to the silk. And
for
so
viewers who don't know what that is, can you please explain glass bead disease?
It's a terminal illness for dresses. So basically, there's no way to stop it. It's too alkaline, and it's coming out through the beads, and it's creating that residue, and then it's basically going to eat away at everything around it. And you can't clean it off. You can't just sanitize it or scrub it off. Like it's something that's wrong within the bead itself, with how it was made. And it means basically, even though she's in amazing condition, she's essentially a wounded bird. Basically, she's very sick. And there's no way to conserve it out of her unless you literally take off all the beads, clean every single bead, put or replace the beads.
Yeah.
So I don't.
Someone has suggested
a way to
clean it. So, but yes, I think it actually also has to do with whatever the pigment of the bead is, as opposed to just the glass itself. But I could be wrong on that. So, okay, so let's talk about these dresses. Other than the glass bead disease that is eating its way through the object.
But so like with the conservation of it, I'm kind of just take a hands-off approach. There's definitely stuff I could do to help, stabilize things, but I kind of just take a very hands-off approach because I buy a lot of wounded birds anyways. Like I buy stuff that is falling apart, and it's past the point of even trying to conserve it. So I just kind of take a hands-off approach to everything and just keep it in, it's tissue paper, and keep it in its archival boxes, and just be careful with how and when I handle it and how often. But so this is a very prized piece. She's worn once in the early 19 teens, couture with the label. Can't pronounce the name. Even French people couldn't pronounce the name. It's a weird one. But she's lovely. I've done a video about her, and she has the pink little accents, the silk chiffon, obviously the beautiful beading, and it goes down to satin. Her weighted underskirt still in place, and she's teeny weeny. This is a 22-inch waist mannequin, and she still is open in the back. Like this girl was like, worn once, special event, teeny weeny, like never to be worn again. She definitely did wear it, but I think it was maybe once or twice max. Beautifully made. Just like the fact that they're able to put this much weight and with the chiffon, and just it's incredible. It's just bananas how they can do that. Back fascinating, but we're not going to look at the back. We're just going to admire her for what she is. So this is my most recent video. So this is basically 1860 dress that I got. She's in, again, a slightly larger size, so she's got a 33-inch waist, and it's just gorgeous. Like, she's just beautiful.
That green
Very
is fantastic.
Oh yeah, here, I'll move it up closer so you can look at the fabric a bit better.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm.
Is it
So
chenille, velvet little what's
it's
oh that's
satin.
lovely.
It's satin. So
Oh,
yeah, the stripes have satin figures basically in them, and then the sleeve trim is kind of like a velvet chenille almost. So,
nice.
and then you can see up into her.
Yes, very nice.
And then nice buttons, and this side has the big pocket. Where is the big pocket? You're in here somewhere, ma'am. Oh, where are you? I know you're in here somewhere. Oh, there she is. I was like, where is the pocket?
Find the pocket in those pleats. Yeah, exactly.
So she's got
But
her
it's
big
amazing
old
that she
pocket.
has a pocket. That's awesome.
Do you know, basically all of my skirt, anything that I have that's a skirt, unless it's like super slinky Edwardian, they all have these massive pockets. Like, we always talk about how, women, like that whole thing about how women didn't have pockets in their dresses. It's like, you all obviously were not familiar with the Victorian era where they literally could smuggle small children into their pockets. She also has a little watch pocket up here too.
Oh, very sweet.
Yeah. So, and her panels were 19 inches wide, selvage to selvage, beautifully put together, very simply put together, really easy make. I had a couple people panic that it was an arsenic green, and it's like, well, no, you can see the sweat stains have discolored, so the yellow's coming through.
That was a question you answered already.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have anything that's arsenic Shields green. This is just normal green. So yeah,
Awesome.
and then here's.
Oh, let's get a close-up of those sleeves, which you mentioned earlier.
Yeah. So there's some stains on this one, but I'm trying to keep it as steady as possible.
Oh, wow.
So she's gathered and ruched, and then this is the coolest part. The ruffle down the back with the black.
Wow, that's awesome.
So pretty.
How many pieces are the sleeve?
Do you know, I haven't gone digging too much. Let me hold
Is
on.
there an under?
Let's find out. Ba-doop. I think.
Because if that's a one-piece sleeve, that would be crazy pants.
It's definitely a two-piece sleeve.
Okay.
And and there's a fitting. The lining is fit on the inside, and then the silk has been fit to that, and so this was gathered up to fit to the lining. So the lining's fit on the inside, but yeah, then we have that, and then look at that. Oh,
that's amazing. The pleating.
And then the bow. Look at
that's just rummy. Oh my god, that's amazing.
Oh, yeah, and she also was sweaty. Like,
well, why wouldn't you be?
It's like, it's very relatable. But yeah, this is just, the sleeves on this are just bananas to me. She also has a little watch pocket right here. I don't know if you can see that. And then let's turn her around. So obviously modern mannequins and where they put the busts don't work for most historic pieces. But so some of her trim, her beading trim has come off, but can we just discuss how cute the little velvet bow is with the little cotton collar? It's so cute. Precious. I just love it so much. And there was some discussion about the buttons, like whether or not they were like real to the dress or if they were added on later, but it does actually seem like they were original. There's in the back, so
well, there'd also be scarring if there were previous buttons. So
yeah, and like there is some scarring that this was let out, but we also have, I mean, it's still up for debate, but there's just all sorts of buttons all over this thing. So like the back here has has different buttons from anything else. That these are like super classic Victorian buttons. But then this, can you see this button? This button down here is that same kind of sea foamy green color. And this is a really nice, seems to be like original to the dress button here. And there's
Is
two of
there
them, and there's
is there something hanging from that button? Does the
it's
dress
the
drape?
bustling.
Very nice, excellent.
So, and whoever had this actually stitched them, so only one comes off. So this
Uh,
one's actually stitched into place, unfortunately. So, because I wanted to undo it, but yeah. So the way they
right.
just did this is it bustled up, and then she fastened her fastenings here on this side, and
Mm-hmm.
then she also has a very large pocket on her right side.
So I have
So
another question about the bustling
yeah.
technique. Is that just with a really long chain stitch, or like a swing tack, as we would call it in theater, or
Mm,
what do you, or is it a little piece of fabric that's doing that? It's hard to tell in the picture.
I think it's cord actually.
Oh, sweet.
I think it's what's this? There. Is that
Oh, it's
focused?
tiny it's not super focused, but it's yeah, it's like tiny little cord. Oh, what a sweet button. You're back. Awesome. So
Okay.
let's begin with, thank you very much. Here we are shaking up. Grab yours.
I don't have mine in a shaker. I pre-mixed mine in my blender bottle, and
Very nice.
I had like frozen, put my coupe glass in the freezer, but hopefully it's still kind of cold and
Ooh,
not
it
super
smells
warm.
delicious. I have a very tall, narrow little glass. So
Oh,
cheers.
cheers. I want to watch your face.
Ooh, that's yummy.
So the recipe, called for Laird's 100 proof apple brandy.
Yes.
Oh, there it goes. Oh, it's kicked in. Okay. Uh, after hours. It's like 5 o'clock somewhere, right? So I went to the liquor store yesterday to get everything because I didn't have any
Oh
ingredients
yeah.
for this super classic cocktail, which is, apple brandy, chartreuse, yellow chartreuse,
Yellow
and
Chartreuse.
Bénédictine.
Yeah.
Where I'm from, Bénédictine is a sandwich spread. Uh, and so they literally had one type of apple brandy, and it was Laird's with the handwritten label, like the fanciest of fancy apple brandy. And so last night, like, my friend was over, and I was like, okay, I need to like practice making this cocktail because I want to know what I'm getting into for this. And I look, and it's 130.5 proof apple brandy. This thing is so strong.
Whoa.
Like, I was just like, oh no. So mine's a little bit stronger than what it recommended. So not only is it the widow's kiss, but I might make my husband a widower at the end of the night. So
Wow. Yeah,
wow.
this is one of those cocktails that's so delicious it will sneak up on you and you will fall off of your bar stool. Like, be careful, people. This is
Yeah,
good.
no, I made two going. Are you really sure you want to put your life in danger that way? Like,
Okay.
yeah.
So I'm gonna start this question session with,
Okay.
how did you get started in this?
And what specifically?
Collecting. Like, I just want you, like, you talked a little bit about that at the beginning, when you
Mhm.
finished your time at working at Colonial Williamsburg, you're like,
Mhm.
I'm now just gonna start collecting my own clothes.
Um, so, well,
Or talk more about how Colonial Williamsburg influenced this.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think my time at CW really influenced this because obviously when you work in a museum and you can just be like, "Hey, I'm gonna come over to collections and like have a look. Is that okay?" And they're like, "Yeah, it's fine." You get really spoiled by being able to go and look when you have a question about something. So if I wanted to know how to make something from, you know, a 1760s sack dress, like I could just go and look at 1760s sack dresses and get an idea of how they were constructed. So when you get used to working that way, um, it's really, really hard to then go without. And as I've been a maker and wanting to make other time periods, I like to know how they did it. I
Right.
don't like reading a book that says this is how it was done. It's like, no, I want to see the real thing. I want to count the stitches. I want to look at the mistakes. I want to see where they've cut corners. I want to see where they put in the time. And I want to be able to answer the question for myself. Like, that's just how I like to work. And so what I realized is that I just needed to kind of start buying stuff so that way I could answer my own questions. And as it just turned out, I just kind of ended up, I just keep collecting. I just keep getting sent stuff because it's like once you open that floodgate, it just kind of keeps snowballing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now I feel really lucky because if I have a question, like if someone goes, oh, I want to know how to make an 1860s evening bodice. Cool. I got you. What do you want to know? Like, I got one, or 1890s, like how did they puff out their sleeves in an 1890s bodice versus 1830s? Those massive collars in the 1890s, like circa 1893, like I bought a bodice and like that answer that question, they boned them. There's just boning. I mean, like they're just like dragons or like dinosaurs or something. Sorry, you can tell I've had like 2 sips of this cocktail and I'm like, this is why I don't do drunken dress history, because I won't shut up. I'm gonna start dancing on my sewing table. Like, let's party, woo.
Okay, so I watched some of your videos on your YouTube channel, and I wanted to say thank you. So I was sort of just noodling around, and I was like, oh, I'm going to watch this. And I have to say, Kristen Miller's Zone. Right now, I'm working on a project that's set in like 1800 to 1835, and so and I was trying to watch P&P last night, as you called it, and I was like, I cannot sit through this right now. So we'll come back to this. And so Kristen Miller's Zone, the executive director, was like, you need to watch her YouTube video on it. So I go to your channel, and the first thing that pops up is The Muppet Christmas Carol. And I was like, 100%, I have to watch this. Best movie of all time, almost. But I loved it. It was, and I have been feeling the same way about those costumes. It's such an underrated movie, and they did such a fabulous job on it. So thank you so much for like kudos to the Muppets. Huge fans. I loved the incroyable moment. My favorite was the incroyables comparison of the 2 old geezers. Loved it. So
I know, and it's like that nice little detail. So Polly Smith, who was the designer and like designs, I don't know if you know Polly. Do you know Polly Smith? I feel like you probably know Polly Smith.
I don't know Polly Smith.
You don't know Polly Smith. Okay. So like she actually saw the video. And she's commented, and so if you go digging through the comments, you'll find me like fangirling all over Polly Smith. I can technically pin it, but since that is a sponsored video, like there's protocols when you do YouTube or like, the description. So I'm kind of just waiting for more time to pass before I remove my pinned comment so I can pin Polly to the, I'm sweating, pin Polly to the top of the comment section, because the queen needs to get the praises she deserves. And she started telling some stories. And so she's told me 2 stories so far. I have not emailed her back. I am so sorry, Polly. I've been in deadlines. Like, if you're somehow watching this, I apologize. I will email you back. But she was it's so hilarious. Like, I want to interview her so bad, or like CSA needs to interview her or something, because this woman has had a huge influence on Gen X and millennial like childhood, and because she designs everything for Henson. And she was like, oh yeah, like no big deal. I was just working on the dinosaurs, and I just like flew to New York and went to the Henson workshop, and I only had 2 months to throw together like a Muppets Christmas Carol because they were filming in London. So I just was like, here's some shirt research, here's some cotton, have fun, no big deal. I'm just casually designing the dinosaurs, like that just like completely destroyed every millennial child in the early 90s on TGIF Fridays. And then she was like, oh yeah, and Rizzo Smock was my favorite too. I'm like, so you were crazy.
Oh my God, that Smock was adorable. That Smock is adorable. So adorable. Yeah. Any advice for museums deaccessioning wounded birds and getting them into appreciative hands? We usually have to send things to auctions rather than private sellers.
I don't know. It's like, it's unfortunate that they have to go through auction houses, because obviously you lose kind of control over who collects. Like, I mean, because if I could just deal with museums privately, like I would just be like, yeah, like send me what you want to deaccession and I'll tell you if I want it, like, or I'll tell you what I want. And there's a bunch of people in like the historic costuming community, because this is where like CSA kind of has this weird mix of stuff. right? Because you have like costume designers, we have museum people, and then there's now like the hobbyists of historical costumers who are actually like a very huge subculture, like hobby genre. And now that people have realized that they can collect antique clothes and that you're not competing with museums for everything, and that some of the stuff is actually very inexpensive for what it is, so long as you have like the archival boxes and like the tissue paper, it's like you actually can be okay. That it sucks because I know that there are people out there who would take these things in and just give them beautiful, loving homes. I mean, I definitely would with a lot of stuff. I have a lot of people email me privately that I usually don't respond to because I just simply don't have the space or the time. That are like, I want to give you stuff. I want to give you stuff. But for museums, I don't know, especially if they have to go through auction houses, because 28 and 52, man, they're vicious. And I don't know who they are. Like, it wasn't me. Like, I was not, you know.
Sure. I mean, sometimes these things crop up in CSA's member circles,
Mhm.
and so a benefit of being a member, you might hear about this.
Yes.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Um, so yeah, and tapping into our colleagues throughout the country who are all members of CSA and who have these issues that they have to deaccession and deal with them. And some people want to, I mean, of the museum people that I know and have worked with, sometimes they share, they're like, oh, I have this thing that I need to get rid of because
Mhm.
it doesn't fit our mission anymore.
Mhm.
And then we connect up through CSA's networking world, and it's like, oh, we can just like trade these things because it's going from one place to the next. So that's one way of doing it.
Mhm.
But yeah, so thank you for that, Abby. How many objects do you think you currently have? If you had to take a ballpark figure.
I
10,000?
don't know. No, not 10,000. Enough that the jokes about me needing to get professional storage, where a couple months ago it was a joke, is now actually very serious. Um,
Right. Okay.
so, I mean, I probably am pushing close to 100 pieces at this point, if not more,
Oh, that's great.
genuinely. Some of the stuff is not things I'll keep. Some of the stuff is stuff that I actually send off to patrons.
Yeah.
So I've told you this, but as a part of my Patreon, I have a tier that I kind of call it the enabler.
Yep.
And one person, a part of that tier every month, so long as they've been a member of that tier for 3 months, gets sent an antique piece to kind of like start their own baby collection. Um,
Hmm.
and so, there's some stuff in my collection I'm like, I don't have any use for this, you know, or I have like a lot of these. And so I feel like this is something that would be exciting for someone else, but it's kind of like my own deaccession process,
Right.
like because I
Sure.
am starting to get to the point where I have to have like a collection, like not manifesto, but I have to
Yep.
have standards within my collection.
Yeah,
And
you have to parameters. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
And my parameters are obviously a lot bigger and broader than museums are, but yeah,
Right.
I can't just get everything, take everything, because some stuff I'm just like, I already have like, you know, split drawers. I have like four
Right.
or five split drawers. And one of them is my actual like family split drawers, like my great great aunt's split drawers. It's like, so those take priority, but
Right.
I don't need any more split drawers. Like, oh my gosh.
I
So,
noticed a lot of dark black or dark colors in your collection. Was this
mhm.
just the Victorian era or the result of mourning clothes being preserved more than everyday wear?
I
There's
think
been, there's been
it's
a little conversation about this in the chat, but we'd like your response.
yeah. I definitely don't purposefully collect black clothes. I actually am trying to not collect black clothes at this point because I am very bored with black clothes in my collection. Um, Most of my clothes though are not mourning. Like I have a few pieces that I would qualify as mourning,
What?
and
How do you delineate those for our viewers?
I look for matte. So if it doesn't have a lot of shine to it, and I'm not an expert in mourning, like so, and I will say that like I am not an expert in mourning at all. But from what I understand about mourning is that mourning is matte. It's matte black. There's no shine. So that's where you see like the bombazines and the crepes and things like that, is that it's the lack of shine, the lack of reflection. So when you see something that is shiny black, like, a black silk taffeta, that doesn't usually mean it's mourning. It just means that it's just black. And they
Right.
just liked black clothes, because just like today, like, black always looks good. I mean,
Yeah.
even I don't even think she's in mourning. But I mean, this could hypothetically be brown, but it's like this is just fashionable dress. Like, here is all these fashionable dresses from a Peterson's, like, and how many of them are actually black? So, I think we have this concept that if it's black, it's mourning, but the reality is that I think black was just really popular as a color, and so it survives. I definitely have mourning pieces in my collection, but I don't think it's just kind of one of those things where I think a lot of it survives because I think people used it a lot.
There are different stages of mourning and
Yeah.
and things that can shift and change. So yeah, but black has been used. Black is your yes. I agree with what you're saying. All of those things.
Yeah. Well, it's like in the
Another
Tudor era, like black was fashionable. Like if you could get a good black dye, like that was like, oh,
black work.
okay.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
So, are any of your pieces that you've shown us today American made?
I mean, I
Or
think
do
it's safe to
you pin down
assume
that?
that they are, except for the couture piece that was on the mannequin. That one is very much French. It has this label in it.
Why was silk so popular, or is it just survivor's bias? I love that.
I think silk's popular because it's silk. It looks good. It behaves well. When you sew with real silk, it's a pleasure, and the cost of fabric depends in the past. And I think this is something for us that we have a hard time with, because we go, silk is fancy, so it's expensive, and the reality is that in the past, when we didn't have polyester, when we didn't have rayon, we didn't have nylon or acetate or blends of artificial, fabrics, like plastic blend fabrics, you had cotton, linen, silk, and wool. And within those four fibers, you had variations of quality within all of them. So you could have very expensive silk. You could have very cheap silk. Like silk dupioni is cheap silk. Like,
Tote.
It's really cheap silk. But today we go, do what?
$8 a yard.
Yeah. Like it's even cheap today. And people are like, oh, it's silk. It's like, yeah, it's silk, but it's like, do you see the slubs on that? Like, it's not nice silk. Like, it's not like a Duchess satin, right? That's $50 a yard today.
Right.
So we have quality of fabric versus just like what it's made out of. And so I think that's kind of hard for us in modern days to really process that it's not about what it's made out of, but like the quality of the weave. And so silk is just a really nice option. It's thin, it's fun to work with, it's beautiful, it sounds great. Like,
yep.
Taffeta, like the rustle of taffeta is just like, oh, so good. And so I think and also if it is the nicer piece, it's the piece that gets worn less. So you're not going to wear it as often, it's not going to wear out as much, or you're going to try to preserve it as long as you can. I will say though, with my collection, what do I have the least of? I think I have the least amount of linen, actually. And
silk
so
are really durable.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And it's
very strong.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the Mimo bodice, the brown silk bodice. The cotton lining is what it's completely destroyed. The silk is fine. Like, the silk is like, I'm fine. I don't care.
Right, so if you're going to invest in making something or buying something, especially we think of clothes today as such a disposable thing in our life. These were people who didn't own as many clothes. They didn't have the closets of these periods are so small because they had 9 garments.
Yeah. And you make them last.
But you bought things to last and you made things to last
Yeah.
for a long time because you recut them and did all this stuff. So,
Totally.
So Abby, in for the sake of time, I'm going to say thank you so much for all of this.
Done?
We are. I want to start wrapping things up for our and for everyone who's here. But I want to say this has been such a joy. And thank you for agreeing to do this.
Yeah.
And I hope that you continue what you're doing, and we will all be tuning into your YouTube channel. I would also like to encourage everyone to follow the Costume Society of America on
Mhm.
Facebook and Instagram, and make sure that you hear about our upcoming episodes in Conversations on Dress. And if you enjoyed today's content, we implore you to make a small donation to us to keep the content free. And they'll be posting a link in the chat box for you to do so, or send us a check. Become a member. This is a little membership drive moment at the end of the year, so please join us. And thank you all for coming today. We deeply appreciate it. And Abby?
I just want to like do an additional plug for CSA, that if you are someone, even if you are a hobbyist and you have imposter syndrome, that joining CSA is a huge way to be a part of the more like academic community. And obviously with the pandemic and everything, in-person conferences aren't really a thing right now, but in the future, if you are a young person or a not young person who wants to get involved in historical dress and dress history or costume design, like this is the professional organization for that. And so if you want to network with people, like this is the organization to be a part of. If you want good, like well-researched dress history articles, it's Dress Journal that is the academic journal for our hobby, for our focus of study. And that when, I mean, and present papers, submit papers, even if you're scared to. Sorry, this is like me being like, okay, babies, we're talking right now. Like, I've had half a cocktail. This is why we don't do drunken dress history with Abby. Like, but if you're scared, but you want to be a part of this community, because I get so many young people who are like, I want to be a dress historian, I want to be a costume historian, I want to study costume history. This is the organization for you. This is the organization that you need to be a part of, and you need to submit a paper. Even if you're terrified, submit a paper. If you don't want to submit it to nationals, that's fine. Submit it to a regional conference, because there are regional conferences every year for every region. And if you're not a part of the United States, there are also the equivalency in the United Kingdom, and I believe Europe as well.
We're also part of Canada.
Yeah,
So all
Canadians
of
have
our
no
colleagues,
excuse.
we are we are all of North America
Yeah,
and beyond. So
and just don't let your imposter syndrome prevent you from joining something that can actually really open up doors. I have met some of the most incredible
great
people
resources. Yeah.
within CSA and CSA conferences. And so 10 out of 10 recommend. I am a big fan of CSA and I believe in CSA.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's so
Thank you,
fabulous to
man.
see you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you, everyone, for
Bye.
coming today, and have a fabulous and safe holiday.
Bye.
Bye.